Hey everybody, we are standing in the middle of the Franklin battlefield. You can see Carter House, Farm Office, and Smokehouse just to the north of here. You are seeing a view that has been covered up since at least the 1890s. This open view shed, part of the Carter farm and part of the battlefield, is, I think, one of the greatest reclamation stories in the country. What has happened here over the course of the last 10 to 15 years is just stupendous. It really looks like a battlefield. It really looks like a park. So what happened here? So just in the last few weeks, we've installed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new interpretive markers, and we're going to hit these over the course of a few minutes. The big focus here is going to be on John Brown's Confederate division, which comes through this area from my left to right as they slam into the U.S. position, which just north of here was manned by Thomas Ruger's division. But lots of focus on Brown. But let's start actually with George Wagner's division. Some of that story is told on this marker. But let's walk over to the road and get some perspective on where Wagner was. So to orient everyone, north is behind me, this is due south. So one of the things that opening up all of this ground really allows us to do is get a sense of the actual topography of the battlefield in this area. So if we come out here, you can see to the south in the distance a ridge, and then further beyond that you can actually see Winstead Hill. When the Federal Army arrived here early on November 30th, the main line is set up right up here. 3 divisions: Jacob Cox, Thomas Ruger, Nathan Kimball. George Wagner's men are the last ones to arrive from Spring Hill. Wagner has 3 brigades. He was ordered to continue operating as the rear guard. He was also ordered to relieve Emerson Updike's brigade, which had done a lot of duty from Spring Hill up to Franklin, holding off pursuing Confederate cavalry. So Updike ends up taking a position north of Carter House. 2 other brigades are put on that ridge. One on the west side of the road, one on the east side of the road. Joseph Lane, John Lane and Joseph Conrad. This becomes one of the most well-known parts of the battle because this allows Hood to use that advanced line almost as a shield. And when the Confederates attack, they collapse those 2 advanced brigades and then begin falling back. Now, even though we do not own the ground right out here, you can really see how that starts to rise up toward the ridge Wagner's men were on. Now, this ground was at the time part of Fountain Branch Carter's farm, but for a long time was part of the campus of Battleground Academy. It's now owned by Williamson County, and we have secured, or almost have secured, a deal with Williamson County to build a trail across this property, which is going to connect to other property that is owned south of here, or preserved south of here, where some of Wagner's men were. But back to what happens when the Confederates attack. So John Brown's division, 3,700 men or so, are on this side of Columbia Pike, the west side. Pat Claiborne's division, so many men know about Claiborne and what his men do, they're on the east side of the road. So Brown's men, 4 brigades, 2 brigade front, 2 brigade in reserve, just absolutely demolish Wagner's brigade on this side of the pike, and it causes this huge collapse, and so thousands of troops are coming right at us. Several thousand of Wagner's men, Brown's men, Claiborne's men. The whole attack morphs into this full-on charge. You can hear the rebel yell, the screaming and the hollering. Behind us, artillery there, and further west start firing over Wagner's men, slamming into Brown's men, slamming into Claiborne's men. So there's already casualties, but just the sheer force of this. And when I say sheer force, it is like blunt force. Brown's men sweep across this ground. So who he has in front is George Gordon's brigade closest to the road. States Right's Gist is further west. Otho Strahl's coming in behind Gordon. John Carter coming in behind Gist. So just the power of this as they blow Wagner's men back toward the main line, and then they slam into Ruger's position. So that's a little bit of Wagner's story as it connects to what Brown's division is doing. But there's another incredible perspective from this part of the battlefield that as we were working on the markers, we thought was important to tell. And that is told on this marker, which covers A.P. Stewart's corps on the eastern flank. Now you might ask, why are we talking about this from this perspective? Well, here's why. If you looked east, you didn't just see Cleburne's men, which is about 3,000. You would have been able to see A.P. Stewart's corps of over 8,000 troops, which swept past Carnton and have begun to crash into the left flank of the Federal Army beyond the cotton gin. In fact, one of John Brown's soldiers, an officer in the 24th South Carolina, Ellison Capers, said that as they advanced, they could see what was happening to the east. So what we've tried to do here is give everyone really almost a 360-degree perspective. We encourage you to start with Wagner, look south, come to the Stewart marker, and then look east. And then where we're going to head next is the perspective of looking due west. Because this ground, oh, this is a great perspective. Look at the kids who are visiting today in the distance. It gives you sort of a human perspective based on where we are versus where they are, which is about 225, 250 feet away. So that's how close we are. But if you get over here further west, this, although it looks great, this is actually a fairly small area. The depth of these lots that we preserved were really only a couple of hundred feet. When you're talking about a division that's 3,700 strong with a 2-brigade front, you're talking about a front that's probably close to 2,500 feet wide. So this is about a tenth of the size of Brown's division. But in this area, we wanted you to get a sense of what's happening further west. And so a lot of this ground is encompassed by Gordon and Strahl, but further west is Gist and Carter. And students of the battle will know that Brown's division was badly, badly damaged in this battle. Brown himself was wounded, and all 4 of his brigade commanders became casualties. Gordon was captured, Strahl was killed, Gist was mortally wounded, likely almost certainly died at the Harrison House, and John Carter, no relation to the Carter family, also mortally wounded, and we know died at the Harrison House on December 10th. But so this is a perspective. So we've now looked south, we've looked east, and now we're looking west. And so then we have the next marker, which is really just orienting everyone to what's due north of us, which is Carter House and outbuildings, but the main Federal line. I think this perspective is just spectacular because, and it's so great to see all the kids visiting today. These are Williamson County kids. You can see the buses coming through. They've just had a whole experience here at Carter House. So this perspective, just looking north, I don't know, I don't think I could ever get tired of this, even as the bus blocks the outbuildings. To think that just a few months ago, there was a long cinder block building right there, which the front part of it dates to at least the post-World War II era. So we removed 75 years of obstacle, and there it is, wide open. And so Thomas Ruger's division is just across Strahl Street, which by the time you are seeing this, we may be removing that street. That's part of the process too. This street will be removed to about where the edge of that third bus is, and that will be absorbed into the park. My favorite marker, if there's such a thing, is what's straight ahead. And some of us thought this was incredibly important. As we were installing this marker about 2 weeks ago, the first visitors who read it, because what immediately happens is if you put up an interpretive marker, it's almost like moth to the flame. People start showing up. The first people that stopped to read it were a young couple from Australia who were making the rounds across the American South, and they came to Franklin. I think everyone who comes here over the next 10 to 20 years should know that this was a lost battlefield, and that at least this part and what's adjacent to Carnton, as well as Battlefield in Spring Hill close to Rippavilla, has all been saved in just the recent, well, it's all been saved in the 21st century. And a shout out here to Franklin's Charge, the City of Franklin, the American Battlefield Trust, the Tennessee Historical Commission, and the Tennessee Civil War National Heritage Area, and the Battle of Franklin Trust, which really interprets and manages the site. All of these organizations and all of its staff and supporters were the ones who came together to make this happen. And we want guests to understand it didn't always look like this. It really didn't. This is how it looked around 1900. At that time, the farm office wasn't even in that location. It had been moved from its 1864 location and attached to the end of the house, and then it was moved back to its historic location around 1950 when the Carter House was saved by the state of Tennessee. But what a perspective. And then the last marker is just a bit further to the west. So, over time, this dream has become a reality, and all of this was incredibly expensive. These 3 tracts cost $5 million, $4 million, and $1.2 million. That's over $10 million just in real estate costs, let alone, I think, about $150,000 in demo costs, plus now what it costs just to maintain it, plus the cost of interpretive markers, which are about $2,500 each. None of this is cheap, but it's all worth it. Because when the guests show up, the cost doesn't matter to them. What matters is that they can see this and they can get a sense of what happened here. And what we try to do is to get people to understand why it still matters. Why what happened in the 1860s matters in 2026. What's the point? What was the result? Why does a battlefield mean anything to a 20-year-old or a 50-year-old or a 70-year-old? This is a great marker too, called Darkness Descends. And that's a part of the battle that's fairly well known, but we thought that it was important to remind others who might not know, is that it was dark almost, let's say, about 60 minutes after the fighting started. And it dragged into the night, and it was just a violent, bitter, ugly struggle. Ziegler's Pennsylvania battery, further to the west, almost a half mile to the northwest, their guns were posted along what is today West Main Street. They were pummeling this area. So there's a converging fire coming from the federal guns, zeroed in on this zone. There were a lot of locust trees in this area. People who saw the locust grove afterwards said it was just splinters, trees just blown to bits. Brown's division dead and wounded all over this ground. But Ziegler's battery and those other guns, and you can see them in the distance silhouetted by the hills behind Franklin, they just pulverized this area. And that continued until the Confederate momentum, which had been stopped, it continued until Confederate efforts to just push the initiative finally ceased, because it took hours of just a sort of violent struggle in the night for this to finally end, and by about 7:30, 8 o'clock, the Confederate effort has started to flame out. This side of the battlefield and the east side of the battlefield have long been the focus of so much, and understandably so. This is where the Confederates broke through. This is where they actually had a chance momentarily to wreck the U.S. Army, and to see it open, and to see it preserved, and to see it interpreted, and to see guests now not dodging around buildings and trying to make their way through traffic. Imagine what it'll be like when traffic like that is gone. There'll be no more traffic because that road will be gone. And right now, for a moment, it's quiet. and another car that will not be on that road. And there has started to be a quiet sense of peace here, which has always been something that I've appreciated at battlefield parks, is it's quiet and you can take a moment and really just reflect on what happened there and what it means. So if you haven't been to Franklin, I can't wait for you to see it. And if you haven't been to Franklin in a few years, I really can't wait for you to see this. So come and see the great work that's been done. Thanks.